Breaking news. South China Sea, January 29, 2026, a Philippine Coast Guard vessel, the BRP Gabriela Silang, holds its course on a routine resupply mission. Suddenly, the horizon fills with the imposing gray hulls of Chinese Coast Guard ships, larger and more numerous, cutting across the Filipino ship's bow in a dangerous game of maritime chicken. The tension is palpable, but this time, the Filipino captain and crew remain calm, executing their duties with precision. They're not alone. Miles away, Taiwan's Coast Guard is watching, sharing data, and ready to respond in their own waters. This is the new reality in the first island chain, a daily struggle for survival and sovereignty. Chinese vessels, including maritime militia, swarm these waters, harassing fishermen and challenging territorial claims. It's a strategy of coercion that stops just short of open warfare, a gray zone tactic exploiting the line between civilian and military action. In response, Manila and Taipei have forged a quiet, powerful understanding, not a formal alliance but a pragmatic, flexible partnership born of necessity. This silent alliance is built on shared interests and mutual respect, recognizing that the security of one is tied to the other. Cooperation happens below the radar: intelligence exchanges, coordinated patrols, and daily operational support. The world may not see it, but the effects are undeniable, a fundamental shift in regional security dynamics. The Philippines and Taiwan are writing a new playbook for self-defense, relying on civilian-led initiatives and information sharing. Their story is one of courage, innovation, and the quiet determination to defend their way of life against a much larger neighbor. In these troubled waters, standing together, even silently, creates a formidable barrier against aggression. China's strategy is a masterclass in coordinated pressure, applied across two fronts, the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. In the South China Sea, Beijing uses its Coast Guard and maritime militia to enforce its sweeping claims, blockading Philippine-held features and intimidating resupply missions. Around Taiwan, near-daily military drills and incursions simulate blockades and invasions, while cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns erode morale. These aren't separate conflicts. They're interconnected, each move in one area sending a message to the other. China's actions keep Manila and Taipei off balance, forcing them to react and draining their resources. By using paramilitary and civilian forces, Beijing maintains plausible deniability, avoiding direct military confrontation. It's a patient, long-term strategy of attrition, changing the status quo vessel by vessel. Beijing isn't seeking all-out war tomorrow. It's making its control a daily reality, hoping the world will simply accept it. This is the gray zone, a perpetual state of crisis where peace and war blur and the pressure never lets up. The Philippines and Taiwan, though different in history and status, face the same threat: China's expansionist ambitions. For the Philippines, it's a direct assault on sovereignty and economic rights. For Taiwan, it's an existential menace. Filipino fishermen face harassment and their Coast Guard is outmatched in tense standoffs. In Taiwan, the threat of invasion shapes daily life, from air raid drills to national politics. This shared vulnerability has created a deep, intuitive bond. Each sees their struggle reflected in the other. A blockade in the Philippines is a rehearsal for Taiwan. PLA exercises around Taiwan are watched with concern in Manila. They are two dominoes. If one falls, the other is dangerously exposed. Leaders in both capitals know they cannot afford to see the other fail. Their fates are intertwined. The fall of one would isolate the other, tightening Beijing's grip on the region. Their survival depends on supporting each other, not out of idealism, but strategic necessity. Facing immense pressure, the Philippines and Taiwan have chosen a revolutionary approach, a discreet civilian-led partnership. A formal alliance would provoke Beijing and is complicated by Taiwan's contested status and the Philippines' one China policy. Instead, they've built a pragmatic, flexible partnership, an alliance of action, not words. Coast Guards take the lead, framing cooperation as maritime law enforcement, search and rescue, and environmental protection. This lowers tensions and avoids giving China a pretext for escalation. The arrangement is agile, able to adapt quickly to new threats, share information, and develop countermeasures. It's a significant departure from Cold War-era alliances, emphasizing local initiative and resilience. This bottom-up network complements the U.S. alliance system, not replacing it, but strengthening the region's first line of defense. The unspoken handshake between Manila and Taipei is about building capacity, quietly, not making headlines. It's a new security blueprint for the Indo-Pacific, flexible, discreet, and effective. The Philippines-Taiwan partnership is practical and focused on real-world resilience. Real-time intelligence sharing is key. When Taiwan spots Chinese militia moving south, the Philippines gets an early warning. This creates an integrated surveillance network extending both nations' reach. Joint Coast Guard drills focus on search and rescue, law enforcement, and communication, building trust and interoperability. In a crisis, officers know who to call and how to coordinate. Public messaging is aligned. When one exposes Chinese aggression, the other amplifies it, building a unified narrative. This raises diplomatic costs for Beijing and garners international support. Silent backchannels allow for direct crisis communication, reducing the risk of miscalculation. These mechanisms are vital safety valves in a volatile region. Together, they turn two vulnerable outposts into a resilient, coordinated front. The Luzon Strait is the strategic linchpin connecting the security of the Philippines and Taiwan. This narrow waterway is China's gateway to the Pacific and a critical choke point for regional security. For Manila and Taipei, it's a shared vulnerability. Any conflict over Taiwan would immediately impact the northern Philippines. Defense of Taiwan's southern flank is inseparable from the defense of the Philippines' northern border. Recognizing this, both nations have intensified patrols and shared surveillance in the strait. They track vessels, submarines, and aircraft, pooling resources for a comprehensive operational picture. This cooperation complicates China's planning and denies it the element of surprise. The U.S. benefits too, with expanded access to bases and better situational awareness. A secure Luzon Strait, monitored by local partners, keeps the first island chain a barrier, not a highway, for Chinese expansion. The fate of the region hinges on this silent strategic partnership. The Philippines-Taiwan partnership brings strength, but also real risks. Beijing could retaliate harshly, economically, diplomatically, or through intensified gray zone harassment. Both nations are vulnerable to Chinese economic pressure sanctions, trade restrictions, and investment freezes. Diplomatically, China could isolate them further, especially targeting Taiwan's few remaining allies. At sea, China might escalate harassment or blockade remote outposts, testing their resolve. The risk of miscalculation and armed clash rises, threatening to drag the region into conflict. Every step forward requires careful calculation to avoid triggering a crisis. Subtlety and discipline are the watchwords for the Philippine-Taiwanese partnership. Publicly, officials downplay security cooperation, framing it as humanitarian or law enforcement. This ambiguity denies Beijing a clear pretext to escalate, making retaliation harder to justify. Leaks are prevented, and public statements are tightly coordinated. Strategic ambiguity is not weakness. It's a sophisticated way to build resilience quietly. In the gray zone, the most effective moves are often the least visible. This disciplined approach allows the partnership to deepen without provoking catastrophe. The Manila-Taipei model is inspiring other Indo-Pacific nations facing similar pressures. Countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia see a flexible, scalable blueprint for cooperation. It starts with small steps, information sharing, coordinated patrols, and builds trust over time. This bottom-up approach empowers frontline states to take charge of their own security. The message, you are not alone, and resistance is not futile. Collective resilience raises the costs for aggressors and deters coercion. This new network complements U.S. alliances, making regional security more robust and adaptable. The silent handshake between the Philippines and Taiwan is shaping a more stable Indo-Pacific future.